I'm so excited today to be sharing with you some of my all-time favorite beachcombing treasures. You know, we find sea glass out there in so many different sizes, shapes, and colors, and there's so many people that just love and covet, and they get so excited when they find a bright color or a sea marble. But for me, I think my favorite finds are the ones that are really thick, frosty, and ageless nuggets, such as this one right over here. I'm pretty sure that the reason why I love these big nuggets so much is because they're so rare, and the reason for that is because most bottles that were made throughout time, not just in the 20th century, were really thin-walled. So unless you're finding the bottom of a base of a really old bottle that was made probably pre-mold, or something specialty like an insulator over here, it's really hard to come across them. So over here you can see I'm holding three beautiful frosty nuggets that all originated from insulators. I've got the turquoise, the aqua blue, and this manganese lavender purple one right over here. I'm going to share with you some of the insight into how I know that these pieces originated from old insulators. You can see those little lines right at the top of the inside of the insulator, and then you can see those same little grooves right on this piece right over here. And you can also see them on the manganese piece, this one right over here. Now this is what's known as the pinhole threading, and this was patented in the 1860s and it's still used today. The other way that we can tell that a piece comes from an insulator are these little beaded dots over here. You can see I've got a piece of clear glass and it's got those same little bumpy grooves on it, this kind of a hobnail pattern. And this was added so that these insulators could help bead the water down when it was really wet outside. And the earlier insulators don't actually have these little beading marks on them. Since we're on the subject of nuggets, I figured I'd jump right onto this piece right over here. Look at this piece of cobalt blue that's an inch thick and about an inch and a half wide. It's also aged to perfection as well. This was one of the first nuggets that I ever found when I started beachcombing in 2008, and I'm lucky that I still have it in my collection because I'm a professional beachcomber and I have sold a lot of my rare artifacts to help support my family. Now this piece is one that I wanted to talk about because so many of the glass blue vessels that were made, no matter the time period, were very, very small. So here I've got my little Noxzema bottle, and when I take this big nugget and I put it right up to it, it gives you a really good idea of how big and how thick this piece really is. You know, I bet if I had the scale here and I put them together, this piece might weigh the same as this little bottle right over here, or even this tiny little poison bottle as well that I excavated out of the ground. Now, if you thought that this nugget right over here was large, get a load of this piece of bonfire glass that I recovered. You know, most of the sea glass that I recover out here in the cobalt blue shade is microscopic to tiny. We're talking 1 to 5 millimeters. It's very rare for me to find a piece of cobalt blue that's half an inch or larger in size. And when I do, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm doing a happy dance. And that's why I wanted to share these two beautiful nuggets with you right now. Now don't take it the wrong way, everybody. The majority of the sea glass that I find out here is clear, amber brown, and Kelly green. But once in a while we come across something in those shades that's absolutely spectacular, and that's what brings me to my next find over here. Take a look at this massive egg that I recovered in 2009. You know something, for the longest time I figured that it was just the top of a decanter, something really, really special and ornate. And then I had it on my table down at the cruise ship pavilion where I'm at right now. And a woman from the Antique Roadshow came by and she explained to me that this is actually a piece of lead crystal. And that the difference between lead crystal and glass is that this refracts the spectrum of light, and this is actually a lot duller than regular glass. Now, when I put a real piece of sea glass, a big nugget that I found, which is also another stopper, you can see it's got that same shape to it right next to my crystal, the color difference is absolutely apparent. And then what's even more wild is many years later, I recovered another piece of crystal from a stopper. And this one over here, you can see has a huge cavity over there. So there might have been some sort of a protruding piece of glass that stuck out to help it secure into the glass vessel. But these pieces are absolutely amazing, and I love sharing the knowledge. So get out all those clears, everybody, and take a good look. If there's any pieces in your collection that are a little bit duller than the rest of them, there's a good chance that they are actually lead crystal. You know, this type of glass contains anywhere from 2 to 24% lead, and that's where it kind of varies in the shades of gray. And it's not always going to be in the shape like a decanter, because there was so much glass that was crystal produced in the 19th and 20th centuries that it is common to find some very unique and ornate patterns from old tableware, cups, and glass glasses. Now, if you've been following my online sea glass adventures over the last 13 years, there's a good chance you've already heard my story about Little Bo Peep and how she lost her sheep out in the sea. So this is my Wade Whimsy. Out in Canada, these were given away in boxes of red rose tea, and I know that they come from Wade Ceramics over in England. Now, because I know so many of my fans have seen this one over here, I wanted to share a few other ones that you might have never seen before. Right off the bat, I have this guy right over here. You can see he's lost his head as well, and it's the doctor. He's holding his little bag, and he's got an umbrella in his hand over here. This was one of my first finds that I ever made that wasn't sea glass, and I was just blown away with it. It took me the longest time to figure out what it was, but once I did, I couldn't believe it. You might remember seeing me find this little fella over here in 2015, and it's kind of amazing because then this year I found another dog and they are completely different from one another. You can see this one over here has a brown glaze, a brown slip to it, and this one over here is almost snow white with the exception of the eyes and a little bit of green around the footing. It's kind of amazing because they made so many different styles of these. I just never know who I'm going to find when I'm on the beach, but I just know that there were people in my area that discarded these into the ocean many generations ago. We're so fortunate out here in the Canadian Maritimes to be beachcombing on some of the most historical beaches in all of North America, considering the fact that explorers were venturing out this way over 500 years ago, and that's why I wanted to touch on pirate glass. You can see right over here, I've got the bottom of an old square case gin bottle, and they made these bottles square so that they could fit more snugly inside a wooden chest and be traveling across the ocean on maritime travels. You know, I live not far from Dominion Beach, and I love telling the story about how the British had an armored ship out there guarding the collieries out in 1748. So when I found this piece out on Dominion Beach, it actually got me wondering, was this discarded by one of the men that was serving on that warship 270 years ago, even though these case gin bottles were made all the way into the 20th century, up until about 1920 you can find them. Nowadays in the sea glass world, the term pirate glass is just a blanket term that we use for any form of black glass. But the truth is that the age of piracy ended over 250 years ago, so the majority of the black glass that we find is actually from the age of steam. In all my years of studying glass history, the one term that just doesn't sit right with me is Depression-era pink. I've never found a piece of beautiful pink sea glass and felt depressed. If anything, it's the exact opposite effect. You know, it's hard to believe that this over here was given away in a box of laundry detergent about 90 years ago, and then somebody was going to throw it away in their garbage, and I picked it out before it went to landfill. And the same thing with this over here. I absolutely love Depression-era pink glass because there are just so many unique patterns and designs that came out during this time period. It was almost like a renaissance in glass work because we were able to use the automation process as it was perfected to do so many more things that a skilled and crafted glassblower had to do for generations past. I've made a lot of amazing discoveries over the years as a professional beachcomber. This has to be one of my all-time favorite finds. You can see this beautiful chunk of yellow over here is super thick, but it actually reduces in size. This side over here is a little bit thicker than over here. The piece is actually concave. And what's wild is I've recovered probably 4 shards similar to this, although this is the biggest one I've ever found, exclusively out on my shoreline. And what I've come to learn is that this originated from the lens of a very old lighthouse. Now this piece of yellow is amazing, but get a load of this one right over here. You can see the patterns on it. It's almost cut like crystal and it's a lot brighter. I found this piece and then I remembered a few years earlier I had salvaged out of the rubbish this beautiful antique ashtray. So then I put it on my table down at the port, and it's a great place where I get to learn from other people because people come by and they've never even heard of sea glass before, but they see all my glass and my artifacts and they love to share stories from their past. And people told me that they had this ashtray in a nice purple and they had it in a green, but the most common one definitely was this bright yellow. Some of the most culturally and historical significant finds that I've ever come across are the ones that are based on religion. You can see right over here, it almost looks like it's a Celtic cross on this piece of ceramic, only but a small fragment of it. I imagine this one right over here was brought over by some of the migrants that moved here during the 1850s and 1860s when the potato famine was happening, as 50,000 people moved to Cape Breton in search of employment and a better life. Now that's not the only religious artifact that I've come across. You can see right over here, I've got a hand, and that little hand is holding a book. Now, I've always said that there's only one book in the world that a statue would be made where the hand is holding it, and that's the Bible. I've always tried to match this little find right over here to the original statue. So if you're watching this right now and you have this at home in your curio cabinet, please let me know. You can see right over here I'm holding a tiny little coin. Well, this isn't actually a money coin. This right over here is a St. Michael's religious token. I've been told by numerous locals that fishermen would carry this little token over here for good luck and safe passage. As I found it on the beach and it's all beat up, it made me wonder, was this actually lost by a fisherman who went down in one of the 25,000 shipwrecks that have taken place off of the coast of Nova Scotia in the last 500 years? Now take a look at this amazing ceramic find over here, everybody. It's wild because I found it in the same place I found that yellow shard from the old glass ashtray. And I didn't even know what this was when I originally found it on the beach. I looked at it for a while and I just knew that it was really, really different and it was man-made. So I threw it in my backpack, I kept picking tinies, and then when I got home, I gave it a really close look, and then I noticed that there was the belt, and then I worked my way up to the face, and lo and behold, look at that. It is good old Saint Nick, it's Santa Claus. This is another one of those finds that I've not been able to match to its origins yet, but I love to share the story of it because when we're out on the beaches, we're not always finding sea glass. Now, what kind of a video would this be showcasing my favorite finds if we didn't include some beautiful red sea glass? You can see over here a few of my all-time favorite pieces, and they've got these very unique patterns on them over here. That's because they originated from old glass taillights. You know, taillights such as these were kind of prevalent in the automobile industry up until about World War II when they were replaced for plastic taillights. However, when we find them sometimes, they have this little bit of an amberina tinge to them, or the unique patterns such as the ones that you can see right here. Now, I'm not sure if a piece of red glass fused with a piece of clear glass in a bonfire creating this unique piece in my hand, or if it was an actual really ornate vessel that had red and clear glass and perhaps even more colors that we don't know about. But all I know is when I find a piece of red and it's in a bonfire, it tells me that I'm picking in a rubbish cove as opposed to a public beach where the bonfire glass I would expect to see would be more 20th century consumer bottles. And then there's this massive piece of red right over here. We know that this isn't from a taillight, it's actually from the bottom of a bottle because there's a little bit of the wall of the bottle that still remained right over here. It's also a lot darker than those other reds that I showed you, and I guess that's because the reds from a taillight needed the light to shine through. Here's another beautiful shade of sea glass that absolutely gets my heart thumping. You can see these are seeker teals over here. When I hold them down by my chest, it's really hard to see the color, but when I put them up in the light, you can see that they're different shades of teal. You know, pieces like this probably originated from bottles that were made around 1880 to 1900, and I figure because these pieces are so thick that these originated as the base or the bottom of such bottles. Finding a beautiful apothecary stopper like this on the beaches lets us know that we're picking in a very historical spot, and we could probably find almost anything because people were discarding into the sea for a long period of time. We wouldn't expect to see an apothecary stopper made after 1930, and another rule of thumb that I like to talk about is the earlier ones are the aqua seafoams or the amethysts, and then the ones that are clear colored are more about 1910 to 1930, as the glass automation process was perfected and removing the impurities out of glass silica became easier. Thanks so much for watching my video, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed seeing my finds. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing them with you.